So it's a pleasant afternoon, everyone, and then my our big apology for starting this episode late. I'm glad we are all we kept tuned, hoping that the magic we want to perform today through Dr. Sunday will be really very apparent. Uh, I have a wonderful guest that I'm proud to say that we finished from the same school. I usually tell veterinarians in Nigeria, that's if you're watching from Nigeria, there's only two veterinary schools, right? There's Ahmadu Bello University and others. And so I'm almost always proud to say to see when somebody is coming from Ahmadu Bello University. Our guest today is a graduate of veterinary medicine from Ahmadu Bello University, and then of course he has pivoted into something slightly different, right? We used to know that humans care, especially for veterinarians, for their pets. He's reversing the course and making us believe that it's possible that we also get care and get treated by animals. But again, it's not time to let the cat out of the bag. Let's welcome Dr. Seno Agbonika. Hey, good afternoon, Doc.
Good afternoon, Doc.
Good to
Yes,
have
it's
you on our
so
master
nice
class
to be
today.
here.
Ah, yes. And you look really very nice. How's
Yeah.
everything?
Thank you so much.
All right.
Fine,
So,
fine. We're doing really good.
all right. So, give us a background, right? We are veterinarians, and all we were taught
Okay.
in our 6, 7 years in school is how to care for these animals. But apparently, you learned different. Eh, you didn't learn that we should be treating animals. You learned something very significant, that it's possible that animals too can heal humans. Well, give us a brief background of who you are and then how you became an outlier, how you diverted your career into something we're not talking about today. Go ahead, doctor. Good to have you.
Yes, thank you very much. So, like you rightly said, I'm Dr. Sandy Agbonika. I'm a veterinary surgeon, and then I also now have CHAIS credentials from Oakland University in the US. CHAIS stands for Certificate as a Human Animal Intervention Specialist. I'm also a Mandela Washington Fellow, which is something that came about because of this work as well. So, meaning the US government sponsored myself and 700 other Africans in change making Africans, young Africans in 2019 to the United States, where we got some trainings and we also got some more or less connected to people as well that could also help to impact our work. And that has been a major pivotal part of what has now brought us to this point in our work. So let me go back to like you rightly asked to sharing how this all came along. So I graduated from vet school, and then my cousin, who grew up in our house, so pretty much a through and through member of our family, had a child that was born to his family in 2004. Now, his son that was born in 2004 was but was as he was growing, we discovered that he was different. He looked pretty much like every normal child, but we discovered he was different. And different in the sense that at the times when we were expecting him to be able to start saying the regular things or start mumbling and all the other things that children at that age would do, 2 years and all, he still couldn't say a single word. No daddy, no mommy, or any of those. And then at that time, there was no, in the city where we lived, there was no doctor or anybody that could tell us what was wrong or anything. Well, so that happened, went on. He also would at some point just get so, especially in really public places with large people and all, he would get so disturbed by the sounds and all. That happened, and well, with some love, a lot of love, and a lot of attention and everything given by his parents, he was still an only child. he, at the age of 5, 6, now started to pick up and be able to say one or two words like daddy, mommy, and went on to start trying to be able to speak a bit more um, coherently, words that we could also understand and everything. Uh, Unfortunately, we lost him in 2013. He was 9 years old by the time he died. So my nephew, he was named Joshua. He was called Joshua. When he died, I later did come across a video on the internet in 2015. The video of one young man in the United States. His name is Nathan Selov. And watching his video, I now believe that what was wrong with my nephew Joshua was the same thing that Nathan was diagnosed of. And Nathan was diagnosed with autism, but a high function. I later had to read up a lot and learn a lot about autism and all. And from all that I've come to discover, autism is a range from the low functioning, which means the child who can really probably the type that you even see the child and you already know even from the looks alone that there's something wrong with the child, to the high functioning autism, which is a child who you would see looks pretty much normal, but then the child does have some traits of autism within them and all. So Nathan was a child that was born with high functioning autism, specifically Asperger's syndrome. And when I looked through the video, I saw it was more or less an 8 minutes video of a documentary that Nathan put together, talking about how he was born, he grew up, and at a point he was now beginning to have all the same challenges like my nephew had, especially in school. And they took him to the hospital, tried to get diagnosis for him, and then later got to discover that he did have autism, the high functioning type Asperger's syndrome. And then his parents now went on major research. And at the end of the research, they came up with a number of options, but they decided to try one of those options, which was to get Nathan an autism service dog. And then they tried out, they went to an autism service dog training center in the US. And of all the dogs they saw that they tried to pair Nathan with, Sylvia was the perfect match for Nathan. And then Sylvia and Nathan now started off and everything. And Nathan still documented what now happened after he got Sylvia in the video. And if we see the video, we would also discover that from when he now got the dog, and then his experience in school, he was beginning to get really low grades and all of that. He was beginning to become more of a recluse, keeping to himself and not being able to interact with other children and all. But he discovered that from the point when he had the dog, other children that would probably pick on him, that would bully him and all, started to now try to be friends with him because they wanted to have the opportunity to play with the dog. And that now had helped him to start growing a lot better. He now did much better in his grades. He now was able to start interacting with other children, and a whole lot of stories and everything of how Nathan now blossomed after getting the dog. The video was one of, I don't know if you are able to play the video. If you would, I would probably say, let me wait up for the video to play. But if not, then let me just go ahead.
We will get the video up maybe towards the end, but the video is not able to play now. Okay. But again, you could just give us a brief background of what's in the video.
Okay, so Nathan now from that point began to blossom. He now even became a part of a club in his school there. I can't remember, I think forensic something club. And they discovered that he excelled, except he did really well in that club. And so that now even gave him scholarship to go to the university and all. Long story short, that was my first ever encounter with being able to even see this whole thing that animals are actually healing humans. And it's something that I've come to discover that it's broadly called the human-animal bond in the Western world, but having two major parts to it. The animal-assisted interventions part, which is where an animal could be trained to work with various people. So the animal could, in its lifetime or in its active life period, work with different humans, either at one particular center or at different places. So we have such animals going to like hospitals, going to interact with patients in the hospitals, going to therapy centers where there are psychologists or therapists that have people, especially children, coming to them regularly and all of that. Then we have the other part of the human-animal bond, which is like the one I described for Nathan now. That's where we have what's broadly known as assistance animals, where a particular animal, especially dogs, it is trained to work with a particular person for much of that animal's working life. So these ones are usually called service animals, and like in the US and other places, they sometimes may wear a vest, which has written on it that this is a service animal, so the animal should not be petted by other individuals, because the animal is 247 on duty. So that's what got me into all of this. And then at first I saw the video, Nathan's video, and it looked really fantastic. I loved it. And then I was thinking in my mind, I was like, well, it would be really nice if this comes to Nigeria someday. I did not at that point imagine that I would be the one to, or I would be an agent to bringing it to this country and all. But then sometime, I think 2 years late, a year later, a number of events happened that now made me feel, and I also now had a mentor as well who told me, why don't you do this thing? Why don't you try to help? I was already doing taking our dogs to children in schools and talking to the children and all of that. Some of these schools, yes, did have children with autism as well, but we did not particularly pay attention to it by then. And then one of my mentors now told me one day, why don't you look into trying to actually what you're already doing, that you're already taking dogs to schools to help children and all, why don't you actually also focus on helping children with autism and all of that with what you're doing currently? And that was what took me back again to my mind to the video that Nathan did. And long story short, we started from there, and then we are now at this point. In 2018, we now decided to even try to see if this was even something that had potential in our country. So we went to a center in Abuja. If I went to various special needs centers in Abuja and spoke to them, some of them did not even want to did not even understand what we were talking about, so weren't really open to it. But then a few of them, the Zama Institute, for example, that's a center that till tomorrow we feel we're indebted to. They were the first that opened their doors onto us to say, oh, wow, okay, this sounds really interesting. And we would probably want to try this out. So they gave us the opportunity to come talk to the children, to talk to the parents, to see how we can interact as well. And then Dewdrops Community Center for Special Needs Children in Abuja, which is also called Cadet Academy, were the ones that also gave us the opportunity to try it out on the first, when they heard about it, they were like, okay, well, let's try and see if this works. And we jumped. We were so happy to get a center that already was interested in even trying it out. And then we took our dogs to the center in 2018 there. And what we discovered from that trial was this: all the children who were allowed to come and interact with the dogs, yes, it showed great potential for them. But according to what the teachers told us, this showed breakthrough potential for 2 boys that were at that particular trial that day. They said breakthrough potential because these 2 boys, the teachers and therapists had seen that every other thing or every other form of intervention they had tried to use to get these children to be excited so that they can know that this is what they would use going forward to continue to teach these children, nothing really caught the attention of those 2 boys. But when we now came in with the dogs, they discovered that the boys were so excited. They were so interested in doing anything at that point that the teachers asked of them just to get the opportunity to play with the dogs. So the teachers saw this and they were like, wow, this is a breakthrough potential for these 2 boys. And then this was also reported back to the parents of those 2 boys. And on follow-up visits to that center, I also now learned that the parents of these boys have also now gotten dogs at home for these boys. And they're seeing how that is helping these boys even at home as well, in social interactions and in every other way. So that's a brief story of how we got into all of this that we're doing.
So, Dr. Sunday, this is really very inspiring. And I think you've chosen something that it's slightly different and very interesting. I know the way we are in this part of the world, but with people like you, growing thoughts that are this different, right? I think there's a future for the profession and younger vets there. Because, sometimes we're a little less than 10,000. And sometimes we feel choked, like the whole profession is crowded. But I think we're just concentrating on a very minute part of what we are doing, when the potential of what can be is so huge. So I'm really saying this at this point that we're proud of what you're doing. We know the potential of what you're doing, and we know that someday you are going to really, you are already making us proud. Anyway, let me bring up a picture quickly to the screen. This is you talking to the vice president, right? Right. I'm tempted to
Yes.
ask you exactly what were you saying to him, because he's listening so rapt, like you're telling him something on how to dig out gold in somewhere, right? What exactly? How did you get this opportunity, and what were you telling him exactly? Go ahead.
Okay. Okay, so I can't see the picture on the screen yet, but let me just go ahead to talk about it. So it was in 20, in fact, that was, I can very well remember the day. It was on the 4th of April in 2018. I remember the date because it was the day after my birthday. And then um, I was a yearly RLC West Africa fellow, and someone who was in the fellowship with me as well, who had known about my work and how I keep talking about the whole human animal bond thing, and how the person saw an opportunity somewhere that an organization in Abuja where the vice president was to visit the next day, and they were looking for exceptional ideas to pitch to the vice president, and they reached out and they put out a public listing out there for people to pitch ideas to them um, that you feel are exceptional, and if they really love your idea, then they would invite you the very next day to come and have a one-on-one with the vice president. And then I just saw it and I felt, oh wow, okay. And I applied just thinking it would. I didn't even know that I would even get selected. But then I got an email a few hours later telling me that, oh, they really loved the idea and they really feel like this is something the vice president needs to hear about. So I was invited to come in the next day. And the mind-blowing thing about it for me was the fact that we were placed in individual rooms, and the vice president, Professor Yemi Oshibanjo, comes into your room. He comes to meet you as a person and then talks to you, shake hands with you and everything. So it was so surreal for me that I was actually not just speaking in a crowd to the vice president, but speaking one-on-one to the vice president and all of that. So it was a really great opportunity for me. And then he walked into the room that day. We shook hands, and then I pitched the whole idea to him and all of that. And when he heard it, I would never forget what he said. He said that he has had children for his, sorry, dogs for his children all along, and he has seen how those children have really helped. How those dogs have really helped his children growing up. And so now that he's hearing all I'm saying, he can really feel how impactful this could actually be in practical terms for children with special needs, for children with autism and the likes, because of how he has seen how he'd helped his own neurotypical children to even grow up. So he really gave it a thumbs up, and so he was so he was so lost in thought, like while listening to the idea first of all, because he was wrapped in attention for the fact that he could first of all, as he's listening to me, picture his own children, and then now picture special needs children and all of that. So it was a fantastic opportunity that we had to be able to pitch animal assisted therapy to him, and one that he also did fall in love with. And who knows what the future could be for that. Maybe he would probably even be one of those who would be one of our patrons at some point in the future. We really don't know just yet.
The vice president will be proud to watch this. And then, of course, with the way he was rapidly listening to you, I think the way you were called when you didn't expect that you were going to be called to meet with him, you will also be called. So we've been talking with Dr. Sunday Agbonika, one of those very few outstanding vets working on something, permit me to use the word, that reverses our psychology. Instead of us trying to heal animals, working on an idea that reverses the trend and makes us focus on the fact that animals too can also be a source of healing to humans. And of course, with the beautiful story he has mentioned and then he has shared, I think honestly we were impressed. So let us know. We also know that mostly what we're conversant with is that dogs are used for security. They sniff, hard drugs, they're able to do some special operations, right? How do you think, how easy will it be for Nigerians to adopt this technology? Because sometimes, unfortunately, even at the 21st century, some people still think cats, right? They are agents of darkness. you know, how people see cats and still think cats are really very bad stuff. How do
Yeah.
you see this weaving into our society? And how do you think we can move forward and ensure that our entire population embraces this animal healing human psychology?
Okay, thank you very much for that fantastic question. Before going into answering it directly, let me first switch just a little bit to talk about what I feel is very, very pertinent as well to answering this question. And it's one of the things that we also, at every time, every opportunity we have, that we are also educating people about. So, in the Western world, there is a concept of responsible pet ownership or responsible pet guardianship. And that means a lot of things. But one of the very foundational things that that means is being able to select the right pet for your home. Not every breed, not every particular breed of pets, for example, may be suited to my own home or your own home, or the kind of pet that may be suited to my home, the particular breed that may be suited, maybe even of dogs to my home, may not be the kind of breed that will function well for your own home. But so the average Nigerian gets this wrong from the start, or the average African gets the whole concept of responsible pet ownership or guardianship wrong from this very perspective. Many people choose pets without making what in the Western world is known as a conscious or a conscious decision. You probably just choose pets, maybe choose to bring a Rottweiler into your home just because you're thinking of how to get a security dog that will just do the security work for you and all. But you are not exactly making a conscious choice to know if a Rottweiler, for example, or let's even say German Shepherd, or even let's even go to a very calm breed or a breed that is quite. So let's say, for example, a Golden Retriever. So, for example, wanting to bring a Golden Retriever into your home because you see that a Golden Retriever did really well for a friend of yours or whatever, does not exactly mean that a Golden Retriever is the best fit or a Golden Retriever will fit very well into your own kind of home. So, but being able to do your research before you get a breed of animal or dog or whatever into your home is what is one place that many Nigerians miss it, and that is what is responsible for 99.9% of um, the stories we hear on social media of how this dog breed, especially Rottweilers and Pit Bulls, how the story of how it beat this person's child, how it did this one, how it did that one, and all of that. The fundamental thing or mistake that Africans are making, Nigerians especially are making, is this whole getting this whole concept of responsible pet ownership wrong. So now let me come to answering the question directly of how this can now grow in the country. So one of the ways that we are also trying to make sure that this grows really well and excels in our country is to also make a lot of noise about responsible pet ownership or responsible pet guardianship. Because when we are all responsible pet owners or guardians, which means doing your research, knowing the particular breed you want to get into your home, knowing the temperament, and this information are out there for free on the internet. It's just trying to go to Google and then checking up the breed that you're getting. So knowing the temperament, knowing the training potential of the breed and all of that. By the time you know, and then knowing how that breed functions. By the time you know how the breed functions, and then you bring that breed, for example, into your home, you will have a really good experience. And then also knowing how to work with the animal, knowing that this is how this particular breed works, and then working with the breed the way the breed is well more suited to, you would have a better experience than if you did not know or have all this information at hand. And one analogy I always love to use to speak to people when I'm talking about this is in the days when we had manual gear vehicles. You know, most manual vehicles then, for you to put the car on reverse, you would switch your gear all the way to the right and then press it backwards, and then the car goes to reverse. But for a few cars, then, if I remember right, I think the Benz, for example, if you want to take it to reverse, you take it all the way to, instead of taking it to the right, you move your gear to the left, then you press it down, then you now take it forward. So I love asking people, if for example you get that, let's say that Benz, and then you took the what do they call it, the gear all the way to the right, and you took it backwards, which is what works for most vehicles, and then the car went forward. Is it a fault of the car, or it is the fault of you that has the car, that you not study the kind of car you have to make the best use of the kind of car you had? And more often than not, the response I would usually get is it's a fault of the human who didn't study. So we are equally spreading the awareness of responsible pet guardianship so that many more Nigerians know how to work with the animals they have and all of that, and then how to now get better results from them. So that the negative stories that we're hearing that makes a lot more Nigerians to get scared of animals would now start to die down, and these animals can now start to play more and more of these roles that are very beneficial to our own human existence. That said, there are also a growing population of people who are pet enthusiasts in the country, who are doing the right things and having pets, and also being able to, or do I say, keeping pets the right way, finding out. So more or less a growing population of responsible pet owners or guardians. So with all of this put together, and with more of these stories going ahead, that the animals are actually needed for our own existence and all, I want to believe that in some years to come, we will actually have, this will be able to be more ingrained in our society in a much larger way, and then we'll have more people coming on board and more people experiencing this.
Right, so that's fantastic, and you know the way you have explained it, uh, because the more you know, the less mistakes you make, or the less assumptions you make. People make a lot of
Exactly.
assumptions. When you know initially when we were growing up, when a dog, oh, whoa, they say he has seen a spirit. You know, they say he has seen a spirit, or maybe a dead body woke up or something. You know, all this myth. But with knowledge, people will now begin to see that no, these things are slightly different. Maybe there's something, maybe the dog is in pain, etc. So you've stated it correctly that knowing your dog and knowing which of the dog fits well into your own home or family would be a good thing. All right, so but I really still want you to speak specifically, right? You've given us example of these animal interventions, assisted interventions, right? Where do you see all this going, especially in the African continent?
Okay, so one of the major things we're beginning to do, which we started last year, was to now host an annual conference. The hope for the annual conference is that it gets to spread the knowledge of this to a lot more Nigerians, and then a lot more. Well, it was initially intended to spread the knowledge to a lot more Nigerians, but we discovered from the first edition of it that we did last year, the conference, we had over 200 people that signed up for the conference. I think about close to 220 people. And we discovered that people signed up from other African countries as well: Ghana, South Africa, Madagascar, Mauritius, and a number of other places. And some of these people that signed up also, some of them, I'll pick a typical example of somebody who attended the conference from, he signed up and attended from Ghana. And he was saying that this is something that he also feels is of fantastic value for people in his country, but has not seen anyone or has never heard of this in his country as well. So as this grows, we're hoping that, and we're believing that this gets more people that are interested in it, more people that are trying it out as well. We're having more special needs centers, for example, that we're partnering with. Many more, or we're having more special needs centers that are getting interested, that are hearing the story of all the things we're saying, that are watching our conference and are feeling like, okay, well, let's also try this for the children at our place. And by the way, it's not only for special needs children that this functions for, or that this is of value to. It works for a very wide segment of people. Um, Let me just to mention a few quickly. Soldiers, for example, that have gone to war, they have seen death, they have all of that, or even just people in regular communities, like communities, people in communities that had seen communal crises, they had seen death, they had seen all of those. Sometimes they have post-traumatic stress disorder. They find it hard to be able to sleep. They find it hard to. This is also one of the fantastic ways that they could eventually now um, let loose of that PTSD. People who have mental health issues or disorders as well. People in hospitals, it's also really fantastic for people in hospitals, especially for children in hospitals, or people who have even terminal illnesses in hospitals, or even people who have high blood pressure issues and are in hospitals as well. This is one of the in other countries, like in South Africa is the most advanced country so far in the practice of this on the African continent. So I know of a hospital in South Africa, a women and children's hospital that brings therapy dogs into their center. And in the US, there are a lot of hospitals as well that are also practicing this on a daily. One of those was we had people from one of those hospitals. In fact, the hospital that is ranked number one, the best hospital in the US, Children's Hospital in the US, Boston Children's Hospital. So we had two people from their own animal assisted therapy program as on board of our conference for last year, as part of the presenters during our conference, and they shared about how this is impacting the work at their hospital. So basically, we're seeing this growing already in Nigeria as people hear about it and as people are getting more interested in it. More people are welcoming the idea. We're also seeing it grow in Africa, and then we're also hoping that for some places that it has not reached in Nigeria and in Africa, that our conference, which we've begun to do, we had the first edition last year. There's another edition this year, which, by the way, like I talked about Nathan Selov earlier as the one who opened my eyes to all of this. Nathan is going to be on our, is one of those who is going to be on our conference for this year, the major conference that we'll have much later in the year, in August for this year.
Heartwarming. Dr. Sunday Agbonika, we're going to end this year and we're going to restart and pick up questions, right? Just hang on and we will restart so that the audience can participate and pick up questions. So for everybody watching, I'd like you to pay attention, relax, watch the next video and see the questions and interactions that will come up. It's been with I want to use the word almighty Dr. Sunday Agbonika, but I would rather want to use the word